Welcome to another episode of the Federal Newswire's Business of America podcast with your host, Jerry Rogers.
Welcome back to another edition of the Business of America. Again, every show is better than the last. My grandmother would be upset with my grandfather growing up because he would say to her, "Oh, Catherine, that was the best meal I ever had." And she was like, "What about last night's meal?" We're really blessed to have with us today an executive, an entrepreneur, an author, an attorney, a CEO of his own company, sits on boards, Kenan Spivak. And I probably said your last name wrong, so you can correct me.
That's okay. I'm really glad to be here. For what little difference it makes, it's Spivak.
Very good. Thank you. I appreciate that. Look, I was a school teacher for a long time before I got involved in policy and politics, and the importance of an individual's name cannot be undervalued. It's very, very important. So, but we appreciate you being here today. There's so much. We have 30 minutes or so. But start here. Tell us about yourself, who you are. Again, executive, entrepreneur, author, attorney, founder, chair, CEO of something called the CMI Group. And then I know that you sit on boards. Tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we can get into the conversation.
Okay. I grew up in New York City. I was born in Manhattan, but I grew up in Brooklyn. Right. The fun fact is I went to James Madison High School, which is the same high school a bit before me that Chuck Schumer went to, Bernie Sanders, Judge Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Judge Judy. And I've been, Norm Coleman, who was the senator from Minnesota. Sure. And I've been fortunate to know most of those people. Ruth Bader Ginsburg was my constitutional law professor when I went to Columbia Law School, for example. Left James Madison, where I was active in politics, Democrat politics, went to Columbia College Law School and Business School, very active with Daniel Patrick Moynihan when he ran for U.S. Senate. So again, Democrat politics. I eventually moved to Los Angeles, where, as Alan Sherman, if anyone remembers his name from Hello, Mudda, Hello, Father, I joined the GOP, the Republican Party, in a state that actually had Republicans that mattered. Since then, I've been an executive. I was the number 2 person at MGM UA, the major film studio. I was the founding chairman of the John Paul Mitchell Systems Cosmetology Schools. I've been on boards. Private and public companies, a lot of international business. I also write a lot. I've written a few books, fiction and nonfiction. I write a lot of articles. I write frequently for Real Clear Politics. I also write for Claremont Institute's American Mind and for National Review. And here and there, I moderate and speak on panels. So I'm an involved, aware guy who makes his living in business and whose joy is in trying to get this country back on track.
Well, again, this is the perfect host, guest subject for this podcast. Of course, I had to say perfect host because I'm from New York as well. I'm from the Bronx, though, Bronx Irish Catholic, so we were Democrats as well. I was very well acquainted with Daniel Patrick Moynihan, had the honor of working with him on some projects at the Manhattan Institute. When I was there, we gave him the Alexander Hamilton Award. And so you were, and I'm sure you still are, in very, very good company. Daniel Patrick Moynihan, I might quote him every day. You're entitled, I'll paraphrase, you're entitled to your opinion, but not to your own set of facts. This was a very important elected official, public leader in terms of looking for solutions. We need more Daniel Patrick Moynihans. We miss him in the public debate. Let me ask this, because like you said, you make your business in business, you're living in business, but you're trying to make this a better place. And I'm going to ask you, the economy has taken a hit over the past 4 years. Energy costs, the attack, I think, on the energy sector, the invasion in business of politics, and wokeness, diversity, equity, inclusion. There's been some interesting studies about DEI. I know you've written about it. Gauge for us the future, the next 2 years, the next 4 years, the American economy. Are you hopeful, or are you a despairing optimist?
I'm hopeful, but I'm not certain. And going backwards for a second, I know the Biden administration likes to tout what it thinks are the terrific results of Bidenomics. And there are some statistics by which the economy did do okay the last 4 years, but it didn't do well by individuals, and it didn't do well, and you mentioned it from a societal point of view, the level of control, the replacement of merit by DEI and ESG.
Yes.
You have to look at where the money's flowed, and you have to look at the incredible increase in the national debt that's funded some of this expansion, led to inflation, but will lead to terrible consequences going forward. And so in directly answering your question, the Trump administration has promised, Donald Trump has promised, his nominees have promised, and I'm going to monitor and try to keep them to that promise, that they're going to eliminate DEI, ESG, and these other woke, unconstitutional, un-American aberrations from our economic system and from government. But if we look at the battle over the continuing resolution, the battle that's going on right now, there's not going to be a magic wand. We're not going to suddenly see on the economic side everything get better. You know, Donald Trump disappointed me by asking this Congress to waive the debt limit. For a man who says he's not a politician, that was very political. He didn't want to be the president who increased the debt limit. He just wanted to be the incoming president who advocated an increase in the debt limit. 38 Republicans voted against the Republican version of the continuing resolution. Spending is still skyrocketing. Under Trump, even before COVID, spending was up. So again, to directly answer your question, I am optimistic, but I am not certain that things will get a lot better on the economic side of the economy. I'm just about certain they'll get better on the woke side of where businesses run amok.
It's interesting for our viewers and listeners. We're right in the middle of the congressional debate on the CR on funding the government. This podcast will go up next week. It's Christmas week, holiday week next week. So this might be settled by then. However, I want to ask you a follow-up question about the Donald Trump did, and I called around today. I'm in D.C., and I'm the editor of Real Clear Policy, editor of Real Clear Health, and keeping close tabs on what's happening. And I asked around, why did Donald Trump? You gave a political reason. I think you're 100% right. He wants to see the debt limit done away with or increased under a Biden presidency and not under a Trump presidency. But someone did mention this to me, a friend at the American Enterprise Institute, for better or for worse. He said that he thinks the reasoning behind the debt limit ask is because he wants to make permanent and expand on his job and tax bill. And I didn't get a chance to go into that, but could there be a sound economic reason? I'm with you, but again, let's explore it. Does the debt limit ceiling limit what Republicans, the Congress, and the president, a new president, can do in terms of taxes?
Okay, the answer is they're both right. Yes, I do think it's a fact, not just speculation, that one of the reasons Trump wants to increase the debt limit or waive the debt limit, as he's now putting it, is so that he can make the tax cuts permanent. And so that some of the other things he wants to do can be enacted. But that's a circular reasoning back to, should he be doing those things if the result is a dramatic increase in debt? Should he be doing those things without thinking about the impact on other aspects of his agenda and what it means for our debt burden. So I think what you were told is very much a part of the reason, and maybe I was using a shorthand, but I still don't agree. Let me change that. We're going to have to increase the debt limit. It's a fact. It's unavoidable. It has to happen. By Trump saying that that should happen under Biden, that's purely politics.
Yes.
There's no substance to that. That Trump would have to increase under his administration the debt ceiling to achieve what he wants is also true. But I would like the House, the Senate, and the President to carefully look at their full 4-year agenda with a goal towards getting under control a debt burden, which is now something in the range of 120% of our GDP. And that doesn't put us in a good peer group with other countries. That's not where we want to be.
I've said this before, and I'll ask you, perhaps the greatest conservative market-based reform we can see Congress implement isn't even a reform, but rather the simple idea and task of going back to regular order. The committees, the 12 appropriation bills, having hearings and testimony, having debate, having compromise. We haven't had a regular budget, so to speak, I think since 1996. And so if Congress did their work, then we could deal with the taxes, perhaps the spending, make trade-offs, and this sort, and make compromise. I mean, the fact of the matter is, if you want to make legislation, not everyone will be pleased. My father told me as a kid, he said, "Hey, Jerry, if everyone likes you, if everyone's smiling at you, you're doing something wrong, right? There has to be a give and take." But what do you think?
Well, let me give Nikki Haley credit. She brought attention back to the fact that in the last 40 years, there have been only 4 years. The last was 1996 for the 1997 budget, during which Congress enacted the budget for the following year by the deadline, by the time it was supposed to do that. And this speaker and the Freedom Caucus and Kevin McCarthy and centrist Republicans have run on restoring regular order. Now, that's not something most Americans understand, but as you correctly observe, it's going through the committee process. It's taking the 12, and there's normally 12, appropriation bills and passing them one by one, each one going through its committee, not rushing to whether it's a continuing resolution or even just passing a budget in a 1,600-page bill all at once without going through any committees. Nancy Pelosi saying, we'll have to pass the bill to know what's in it. The Republicans aren't being a whole lot better than Nancy Pelosi. I think that regular order will lead to better governance because it will lead to better analysis of the outcomes of the decisions that are made. Now, let me balance that with, again, a reality. I'm a pragmatic person.
Yes. Practical intelligence.
The 1,547-page version of the continuing resolution, which even by next week, that will be the one that failed. It was filled with non-spending governance. One of the things that people in Congress like to do is to put provisions that don't relate either to reconciliation bills, which are always spending bills, or budget bills into budget bills, because then they get passed because people need to pass the budget.
Right.
So this bill was filled with Democrat progressive agenda items that don't belong in any bill. It had some other items that are, I'll give you one that's directly contradictory to the Republican platform and to everything Republicans and conservatives believe in, which was a 1-year extension in the State Department's bureau that's engaged in censoring primarily conservative speech. No Republican, really no Democrat, no person who believes in the First Amendment should be voting for that. So not to go on for too long, I do believe that restoring regular order would help. I don't know if by itself it solves the situation, and we still could be much better than we are, even without regular order, if centrist Democrats and Republicans understood that spending has consequences and that progressive policies and spending don't belong and don't have to be in the same bill.
Let me again. There's a lot to unpack there, but I'll keep it to two things. Number one, and maybe this is a silly question: are Democrats progressives just better at politics? In other words, it does seem that their priorities, even when there is a conservative or Republican majority, their priorities make it through. But then you see other items that are GOP or conservative priorities, and they continue to fail. I'll give you one example. We've had a lot of talk this past 2 weeks about healthcare because of the tragic assassination of a healthcare CEO. And again, that's a whole other podcast in terms of murder is wrong, but we're hearing from the hard left. But the fact of the matter is, I was at a health policy roundtable last week, and everyone's complaining about the PBMs, the middleman and drug pricing and the big pharma. And I said, well, look, you could trace the huge spike in premiums to Obamacare. We could go back and fix this. In fact, I could write a bill to fix it, at least fix it on the road to getting it fixed. But no one even wants to discuss it. No one wants to put forward legislation. We get this nonsense about repeal and replace instead of offering a menu of options and taking care of some of those regs in Obamacare. But yet we can never get it done. So are Democrats just better at this?
All right, splitting away from the PBM discussion for a minute, which is a whole other discussion.
Yes, I know. Yes.
100% Democrats are better at this. I've written some articles where I talk about the fact that the Democrats have taken control of education at every level: school boards, accreditation agencies, faculties. They've taken control of bureaucracies, and they've done that over the last 50, 60 years, and they get my full respect for what they've achieved. Their patience, their foresight, their interlocking strategy has been incredibly successful. We really have to recognize, and if there was an award for successful politics, they win it. Now, that's not good for America. It's not good for what I believe in. It's not good for America. The things I believe in, by and large, I think are good for America. Some, maybe I won't be that arrogant about. Maybe they're just things I believe in. But their success is harming America. Their success is in so many ways moving us away from the constitutional principles that I believe in. They're better at PR. They're better at politics. They have become, since Nancy Pelosi, but not before, better at keeping their congressional troops in line. They're better at speaking to the speaking points. Republicans and Democrats every day send out the RNC, the DNC, the administration memos that have speaking points. So Republicans probably put it in the circular file, and Democrats memorize them and use them.
And you can see that, right? You watch the morning news, into the cable programs, into what's on social media, and it's almost, well, I heard that already. I heard that. You're 100%. They memorize, and then they're consistent and persistent in terms of their messaging.
And not all Democrats are progressives, because you asked the question sort of both ways.
Right.
Of elected Democrats, I don't know what percent are progressive. Of all Democrats, it's growing. Forget this last election for a second. That may suggest some drop off. It might be up to 30 or 40% of Democrats. For a long time, we were saying it was 15 or 20%. Now, those people are noisier than other Democrats. Centrist Democrats are in that old Nixon silent majority, whether they're Republicans or Democrats. So they're noisier, they get more attention, they're more vicious, they're more willing to use their power to hurt others. And they don't have complete control over the Democrat Party apparatus. Pelosi, who once upon a time we all thought of as being very far left, compared to progressives, she really is just a traditional liberal, not a progressive. The definitions change. I'm going to say the Democrats are awesome at the undertaking of politics. The progressives are just mean. They're actually not as good as Democrats overall, but they're sure mean and loud.
You know, that's interesting. On the pages, the editorial pages at Real Clear, there's a distinction we're making between Democrats, liberals, and progressives. And with liberals, you could have a disagreement in degree, but with progressives, we're having disagreements in kind. Their reality, their set of principles, their understanding of history, it differs from most Democrats and most independents and most Republicans. But let me ask you this: this is the second part of what I was thinking about, and that is with the CR, with the 15,000. It was 15. Was it 15,000 pages? I forget now.
It was
the first
1,547.
1,500. All right, I apologize. 1,500 pages down to 150 pages. Anyway, in the old days meaning 10 years ago, maybe 5 years ago, to get the message out, we would have had to go through legacy media, and maybe we get a shot, maybe we get 3 minutes on a program, and the message is lost, and the Democrats win. However, this week, what we saw was, I think, very unusual, and maybe this is the new, I hate the term, but the new normal. It was social media that drove the response to what Congress was doing. It was done in real time. The left, or some in the political establishment, are criticizing Musk for this, Elon Musk, but really it was myriad sources, individuals and right of center news organizations that really defeated this in real time. So the question is, are we seeing a shift, a paradigm shift in media, in terms of it might be easier for right of center, more conservatives to get their message out there? We've been out hustled. I agree with you. The Democrats are brilliant and they win. But maybe the new media and how this is set up, we're maybe at an advantage for the first time. What do you think?
Yes. By the way, at risk of going back very quickly,
sure.
Traditional center left and liberal Democrats pretty much have the same goals and objectives as those on the right. They just believe in a different way of getting there. Progressives do not want the same thing as the rest of us. They have different objectives, and therein lies the big difference.
Right.
But turning to your question, Axios wrote something interesting this morning. So by the time this podcast is on a week ago, they said that media is giving people things they read. Reporting is a standards-based approach to the facts. I thought that was an awful self-serving position for a left of center news site to take, that by editorial decision decides what to cover and not cover, how to cover, and what its headlines will be. And to give you kudos, the great thing about RCP, Real Clear Politics, Real Clear Policy, and the other verticals, is I may write an article that's on the right. Above me and below me in the list is an article from the left. And that's the way it should be, so that people read both points of view. The rise of social media, before that, talk radio, gave conservatives a voice we didn't have. We couldn't break through the mainstream media's left of center focus and left of center decision on what to cover. So yes, it makes a difference. The problem is, instead of all Americans getting their news from the same sources, Americans now are getting their news from sources that align to their views. They're not learning the same set of facts. They're not even hearing the same set of facts. And over time, it's not going to be good for American politics. We need to find a way for news sources like RCP and its verticals to have people from all perspectives looking at the same set of facts, even if they ultimately conclude they have a different policy remedy for those facts.
Back to Daniel Patrick Moynihan, we're entitled to our own opinion, but not to our own set of facts. Again, we're going to have to do more shows with you because we can go in so many different directions. I do want to ask you this, though, and only because you mentioned about where in bubbles, I get my news from here. Although it seems to me that my friends on the right who are in politics and policy and media are more engaged with the left than my experience with the friends I still have on the left. They are mostly in the company of others who agree with them. I mean, I do a radio show on Sundays out of Baltimore, and my producer is a liberal Democrat. And so, and I'm a conservative host, and we have exchanges, and he has ideas for the program, and he actually adds to it, and I appreciate it because I remain persuadable. And maybe that's because of my education, which is the question. There are children learning different sets of facts in our public schools about history and about recent history. My daughter is a fifth grade teacher, and she teaches in Catholic school, so the curriculum is different. But still, I've gone through her materials, and I'm like, sweetheart, I'm not sure about this being true. Now, politically, it might be popular right now, but I'm not sure factually if that's correct. Isn't that a major problem? The fact that we're not teaching young people about our history, about the Constitution, about American principles, the idea of American exceptionalism. People think American exceptionalism is, well, we're just better than everyone else. No, our exceptionalism is that we're the only people on earth where the government is subject to us. That makes us exceptional. The fact that anyone from anywhere can become an American, that makes us exceptional. It's these American principles. And we're not teaching that to the next generation. What do you think about that?
I couldn't agree more. There's this type of civics called action civics, which the Biden Department of Education through grants gave strong support to. It required elements of DEI be included in the curricula. It drew on the Gates Foundation, which has backed a number of very far left curricula development activities. Teaching math is now supposed to include teaching about equity. History. We've got to keep in mind that the two major teachers unions for K through 12 education, the American Federation of Teachers, whose president Randy Weingarten is well known, and the National Education Association, which is the bigger one, whose president is not well known, and which the NEA is even further to the left. It always has a land acknowledgement before all of their meetings. It's adopted policy strongly in favor of critical race theory, which even the AFT has not done. My mother taught fifth grade. My mother taught American history the way you and I believe in American history. That's not happening in schools today. And by the way, to your other point, every day I watch MSNBC, I read Politico, I obviously read Axios, I look at the New York Times, the Wall Street
Mother
Journal,
Jones, Vox, The Nation,
Post.
the American Prospect. I do too.
Yeah, and I think people in politics do that on both sides. It's the average person, which is whatever, 320 million of our 330 million who aren't doing that. And now their children are learning a biased history. And I know we're running out of time, but there are surveys in the last year or two. I actually have written about this as well, where the level of patriotism, the belief in American exceptionalism, the belief in American views is declining. It declines particularly when adults go through college, but it's now beginning to decline even in K through 12. We as a country do have a problem, and we've got to turn things around.
Yeah, I've said on my radio program, I've gotten in trouble about it. I take your children out of public school, homeschool, find good private schools. I know it's very expensive, but there's the homeschooling is making strides. More and more people are doing it. I'll ask you this last question because I know you've done a lot of stuff on DEI, and I appreciate that because if you look at yourself, Christopher Rufo from the Manhattan Institute, there's only a handful who have really addressed this in a powerful way, in a persuasive way. And, I was struck. I'm from New York. I told you this, and I lived in an Irish neighborhood in the Bronx. But of course, in the Bronx, everyone is from somewhere else. So we were up in the Grand Concourse, and it was a Jewish neighborhood, and so I grew up with all kinds of ethnicities. But predominantly, the Irish and the Jews kind of lived side by side. That's where corned beef comes from in America, of course. It's we got that from our Jewish neighbors in New York. So it's a New York Irish thing, not an Irish thing. But I couldn't believe the protests and the violence and the threats of violence on our college campuses after October 7th. I mean, it was a shot to the gut for me. And I realized something, and now I've since read about it, that this is really the first generation of the 18, 19, 20 years old that grew up totally surrounded by DEI, inequity, politics. And what we've seen, and this is not an exaggeration, we've seen an alarming increase in anti-Semitism and other forms of racial animosity, but anti-Semitism in particular. How do we push back? Again, this should be the first question. How do you push back? I mean, what I like to leave the show offering something to our viewers, that there's something we can do. We're not helpless. We can write, we can do what we're doing, but what can we do to begin to push back on what I think the DEI agenda, the equity agenda, is so divisive and so hurtful to our culture? I mean, what can we do?
This is a long discussion, and let me try to be productive.
Well, let's do this.
Short answer.
Can I do this though? Can I invite you back after the new year, and we'll have a part 2, and we'll pick up on this question and go forward, because I think this might be the most important question our culture is facing. How do we live together, and how do we move past? I thought in the 80s we were beginning to make great strides in terms of racial, ethnic issues, and then we had the Obama presidency, and we've had the Biden administration and DEI. But anyway, something positive for the holiday break in front of us.
You know what? I want to say something that is positive.
Okay.
No two people are more aligned on a lot of issues than many Jews and evangelical Christians.
Yeah.
It is fantastic for Israel that the next ambassador is Mike Huckabee, who's an evangelical Christian. I'm Jewish. My wife is not. I go to Christmas events. I've been going to Christmas since I was a child. My parents' best friends were not Jewish. I've gone to midnight mass. I say Merry Christmas. I don't say Happy Holidays. Most people in America get along. They get along from all religions. They get along. By the way, Muslims, Jews, and Christians in America, for the most part, get along. There's a minority of people who don't. That minority is growing stronger among progressive Democrats. But we're not going to let them win. America is going to win. And American people are good people who get along, and they get along regardless of religion, because they understand that people have different religions and they all are good religions. So that's my good point here. We're in the Christmas, New Year season, and we should remember that overwhelmingly Americans are not part of this anti-Semitism problem or Islamophobic or any of these phobics.
I think that, and I've done this before where we've done a series of programs. I didn't have that in mind when we started, but this has been a very good conversation, and I'd like to continue it. I'll be in touch, and then maybe in January we come back and have a part 2, and maybe we don't do the Jerry Rogers let's talk about these 5, 10 things. Maybe we actually just pick a topic, DEI, and go with it, or whatever. There's other issues I want to discuss with you, like innovation in science. So we'll do that. But thank you very much. This has been an excellent show. All my shows are excellent, but this was even more excellent. How do people find out more about what you're doing? Where to find your work? I know National Review, American Mind, Real Clear Politics, Real Clear Policy. But if folks want to is there a website somewhere where they can go and find you?
I have a business website, but then they'll just find out about my business. That's www.smigllc.com. I guess I say sometimes people can just stick my name in a search engine,
sure,
and the various articles will come out. Smig LLC, they'll just learn what I do for business.
All right. Well, this has been a great joy for me, and I love these conversations, and we're going to have you back on again.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much. To the audience, happy holidays, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah. Have a blessed New Year. I appreciate the year that we had. The business of America is great fun. We're growing, and we're making a difference in terms of having an impact on the public debate. Thank you for another great edition of the Business of America. Thank you.
This has been the Federal Newswire's Business of America podcast, hosted by Jerry Rogers. Check out the Federal Newswire's family of websites, as well as their social media stream